My name's Amber Lynn. I'm a cop's daughter, a cop's sister, and I've got a lot of friends in law enforcement. Welcome to the Bad Boys podcast.
Welcome to our first episode of Bad Boys with my dad, Chris. Hi, Dad. How's it going?
Great. How are you?
So good. Thanks for joining me on this because I know you're so excited.
It is. It's exciting.
All right. So I want my dad to introduce himself a little bit here. I want you to tell us how many years you've been on the police force, different departments you work for, things that you've done along the lines of duty.
I've been a police officer for over 35 years now. I have worked with Utah Highway Patrol, Orem City Police Department, Summit County Sheriff's Department, and currently I work at Utah Valley University on a college campus. I have been there, done that, so to speak. I have been involved in as much as I possibly could over the years. Worked patrol, criminal investigations, narcotics. Was able to work on several different SWAT teams from Utah County, Provo Orem, Summit and Wasatch County. During the Olympics, I was with the Orem Provo team, and we had to take care of a venue down in Provo, plus other sites that we had to watch here in Utah County that were considered vulnerable spots. Worked with a lot of people and taught at the police academy for over 20 years and just still enjoy law enforcement. Been around a long time.
Yeah, so do you say you have a pretty good passion for it then? Or a love for it?
I would say that I kind of have stuck with it because it's a job that I wish more people would look at and turn into their careers because it is fun. It takes a special kind of a person that wants to serve their community, but also there's a lot of things that you see and learn in law enforcement. It helps a lot of people.
Yeah. Well, that's good. We also know that there's several lives you've changed as being a police officer. I think you've told me about several people that you've arrested back in the day, and they've turned their lives around because of you.
I don't know that it was necessarily because of me. I think it was more because of the way I treated them. And they felt that somebody actually gave a crap about them. And I've had people come back to me years later and say, "Are you so-and-so?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And I kind of look at them out of the corner of my eye like, "Oh, crap, do I have a gun with me or something to protect myself?" And then they shake my hand and tell them, "You probably don't remember me, but such and such happened. And, you were the officer that arrested me. And the last thing you told me as you walked out of the jail that night was, tomorrow the sun's going to come up again and it's going to be a new day on your life. And, look at your past and compare to your future." And people have actually come back and said, you helped me and thank you. So it's been good. It's a good career.
That's a really big compliment too.
It truly is.
Especially in this day and age where you've got a lot of, especially on the East Coast, where you have a lot of negativity surrounding police officers. So to hear this is really positive and uplifting to hear for everybody out there. Everybody's lives matter, right?
It truly does. The police officers really don't look at the color of people. They respond to each call individually. They don't. I mean, I've been colorblind my whole life. I don't look at a person's skin color. You can't really judge people by that. That's just an unfair bias. But it's hard in some areas, I guess, just the way people are brought up. I'm not that way, and most of the officers I know are not that way. I mean, I work with several officers that have Hispanic culture. I've worked with guys that are colored guys, and females, the same thing. I really don't have a bias against anybody's skin color. What I'm biased against is people that break the law, and that's what cops do. They kind of just, Lady Justice is blind for a reason. And she's our mother, in law enforcement. So we have to kind of have a blind eye to the color of people. And it's not a colored issue like so many places try and make it.
Yeah, maybe in those areas possibly. But we're here in Utah, and we have a very big Hispanic population here.
Oh, yeah.
So I for us here, I don't see any racism. I don't see it in the police officers around here, but yet, again, we are in a different culture.
That's very true. So that's the way it is.
Yep. Well, asked my dad to come on this podcast as my very first. Actually, it'll probably end up being 2 episodes here because he says the story's pretty long. I kind of want to give a little bit of a background here why I decided to do this, but I've always been interested in police stories because when I was a little girl, my dad and I, we would always watch Cops growing up. You all remember the TV show Cops. Don't tell me you don't remember the TV show Cops. And
It's still on TV.
Is it?
Yes.
Oh, I guess I'm too old to realize that. Or I just never watched enough TV. But we've got, you had America's Most Wanted, which is one of my favorite shows. And so we'd sit down and we'd watch those. I feel like as a family for a long time, you know. And so it got me really interested in that. Now, to be a police officer, you know, there were a few years where my dad would just be like, you could be a police officer. I'm a little too much of a girly girl for that, but I fully support the Men in Blue, or our Blue family, and I am proud to be a part of it. And what else I love is I love hearing the stories. Along, you know, all these years growing up, my dad is not a cop with an ego. He is very humble. You meet him, he's very humble. He's very kind. And so when he would tell stories, he's just very relaxed. He's not very, he doesn't have that ego, like I'm trying to build myself up here, which is what I love. And I loved hearing his stories, and some of his stories he'd be talking about like nonchalant. And my mom would be freaking out, like, you didn't tell me that. Because they're pretty big things, right? When my dad had a...
Oh, yeah. Shot the neighbor.
Shot a neighbor. I mean, he's been through a lot of things. So... Anyway, so I wanted him to tell this story, and when I asked him to come on, what he said to me was the word dismembered body. And I go, don't tell me. I don't want you to tell me. I want to hear the story on the podcast. So I want him to tell the story, and we'll kind of go back and forth here if I've got any questions that some of my listeners may want to. I'll try to think like a listener here, guys. So take it away, Dad.
Well, this started, it was just a normal day. We were actually in a training class, and it was when I was with Summit County Sheriff's Department. I have to be careful. I can't use names and things, but I can at least use a location.
How long ago was this about?
This was several years ago. We want to go back. It was probably 12 or 13 years ago. And it was springtime. Like I said, we were sitting in a training class. The Sheriff's Department, we had annual training. It would come around so everybody could make sure that they had at least their 40 hours of training, which we have to have every year. And one of our captains got called out of the training class because up just below the Wyoming border, just off of I-80, a railroad crew had come across a severed hand. And
ew.
Yeah.
How did they come across that?
Well, they were working out on the railroad. And
oh, okay.
And the railroad parallels I-80 going up towards Evanston, Wyoming. And they had pulled off the road, and one of the guys in the truck, he saw something on the ground. He thought it was a bear claw. And so he says, hey, stop the truck. I want to see that. And he jumps out and he grabs it and he picks it up and he brings it back in the truck with the guys. And they're looking at it and he goes, yeah, it looks like a bear claw. It had been decomposing for close to about a year.
Oh, okay.
And
so there's no skin on it by that point, obviously.
It was actually almost mummified. The skin, the blood had drawn out, and the skin had just mummified around the bones. So it looked like a bear claw or something to that effect. But as he's looking at it, he rolled it over and could see that the fingernails had been painted. And the guy, I mean, you're talking railroad workers. You're talking a bunch of huge guys that can pick up timbers and just toss them. I mean, these guys are not little wimpy guys, and they don't get knocked around too much. Anyway, it freaked them out, and they were like, "Get it out of the truck! You're causing all kinds of problems." Anyway, they kind of put it back on the ground, and they said, "Okay, now what do you got to do?" And they're like, "Well, call the sheriff's department. Got to do something." So they called the sheriff's department. Our captain went up, and sure enough, he got there, and he also was a medical examiner, worked for the state medical examiner's office. He was not a man that was not very familiar with bodies, body parts, dismembered things, and he was like, this is definitely a human hand. It's not a reproduction. This is exactly what we have.
Wow.
And at that point, it was kind of like they didn't know really what to do. So, being that it was dismembered, he called the rest of us out. I was working criminal investigations at the time, and he called the rest of the guys in the detectives division and a few others up to the scene where this hand had been located. As we got there, everybody's kind of spreading out and talking and trying to get things taken care of. We had a gentleman he worked part-time for the sheriff's department, and he had a GPS system, and he could go and set things up and actually get exact locations if we found anything. So he set up
like coordinates, you mean?
Exactly.
Okay.
GPS coordinates of any body part or any other items that we found that were of interest for this case. So as we got there, we kind of milled around for a little bit, and as we found out, we started talking, and we didn't know if we were going to find anything or not. But over the course of the next hour, we started locating several body parts, and it became completely obvious that something had happened to someone.
Oh my
They had
gosh.
been obviously murdered, and then their body had been dismembered. And when I talk about parts, I'm talking about they cut the hands off, they cut the just above the wrist, they cut the arm off just above the elbow joint, and it was
It's very piecey.
It was pieces that were maybe between 8 and 12 inches in length.
Gosh.
And it was like putting back a human jigsaw. And like I said, our captain had worked for he'd been with the medical examiner's office, and he'd done a lot of search and rescues. He'd done a lot of body recoveries. I mean, the man was very smart. He very much knew his stuff. And so we got the main location. Anyway, as we started finding body parts, it was obvious that this was kind of really strange. Now, to kind of give you an idea where we are, if you're looking towards Evanston, Wyoming, if you're looking towards the east, I-80 would be on our right, and the railroad tracks would be to our left. And there is a frontage road. It's a dirt road that goes up. And these body parts that we were finding were between the frontage road and the railroad tracks, going more to the, I guess it would be northwest area of where the
So
things
away
were.
from the highway.
Away from the
Okay.
freeway. But it's accessible. I mean, you can just take the exit, drive around, and it's a place that you can get to. Anyway, over the course of the next few days, we got several people involved. We had search and rescue. We had the detectives division with the sheriff's office. We had a group that has dogs. They're called cadaver dogs. They come up and they can find dead bodies and body parts. These dogs are amazing. What we had walked through once, we would walk through again with the dogs, and the dogs would alert on something. We would go over and be able to, again,
Wow.
log the place that the body part was found, photograph it, GPS log it, and then we would take it, and our captain had a large piece of, I guess, basically a big blue tarp. As we came, we would put the parts on the tarp, and he was putting things together.
Like it was a puzzle.
Like it was a huge human puzzle. And about, as we're going through this, I stumbled onto at first it kind of confused me because I really didn't know what it was. And it was basically the bottom, somebody's bottom end, their butt.
Oh my God.
But they were still in shorts, like short shorts. Their legs had been severed just below the hips, and
Ew.
it was like a mannequin that was showing a pair of Levi's shorts.
We all
That's
know
what it
it's
was.
never a mannequin.
And I'm looking at that thinking, this is the weirdest thing. I can't believe I'm really looking at this. So I, made a notation. I called out. The guy with the GPS system came over. The captain came over. He took his pictures. and said, this is very, this is the main part of the torso. We need this. Oof. And he starts, after he's taking the photographs and stuff, he reaches in the back pocket, and lo and behold, there's a Utah driver's license.
Somebody missed that.
Well, we hadn't searched.
Well, not you guys. I mean, the guy who killed this person.
The bad guys didn't, obviously they weren't looking for looking for ID on anybody.
Obviously.
But this gave us a clue, obviously. The captain, we tried to keep things, we didn't want names and stuff going over the radio. Right now, we're on the back end of a homicide case. So we've got to gather all of our evidence and then move backwards to try and work this case out. So as we continue to find more and more parts, we find almost every part of this poor person that had been dismembered.
You're kidding. Do you think that was the help of the cadaver dogs?
I think it was a work of the search and rescue, the cadaver dogs, the detectives, everybody involved. I mean, it was something, and it's funny because this was somebody's mom or dad, uncle, friend, cousin, somebody. This was a human being, and this was a person, and you don't want that person not to get justice in this life.
Right.
Granted, my beliefs take them to the other side, and they're far from what their body was, but there's family members waiting to know what happened to this person.
Yeah.
So as we check into things, we get everything, and we're just kind of. We're coming to the end of our search, and we've been up there several days. And the captain comes back with information. They'd gone down and they'd run the name, and the name came up as a missing person out of Salt Lake. Now, this is going to sound extremely weird, but remember I told you about the hand and the painted fingernails?
Yeah.
Obviously, most people would think this is a female. The
man.
ID, and when they got all the body parts down to the state medical examiner's office, we found out that we were dealing with a male, and the missing person that was missing out of Salt Lake County was that of a male.
Oh, man.
And as the story went on, it come to find out that this was a guy that had, I don't know, transgender. Tendencies, but he was still a male, obviously, and still had family members, and it was kind of hard because we ended up dealing with the family, and they were wonderful people. So as we kind of got things gathered back in, as time went on, the first of the next week came around, and going back to the investigations office, we had a sergeant that was really meticulous, and he started putting everything together. From all of our photographs, all of the GPS coordinates, everything. By the time we were done, he had 2 full orange boxes of evidence. And I mean, this case, like I said, we are in our infancy on this case, but we're moving backwards.
Right.
So as we go, and each of us are assigned certain things. A couple of us were assigned to go down to Salt Lake and meet with the mother of this missing person.
So you guys felt confident enough after running the driver's license and seeing the missing report.
After we had, now we never did find the head.
Oh,
but
gosh.
Again, the magic of modern science, they were able to take that initial hand, and because the skin was still on it, even though it was mummified, they were actually able to plump it out, get a fingerprint, and verify the name, the fingerprint. He had a very minor criminal record, but it was enough that he had his fingerprints on file.
Okay.
And we were able to verify between the driver's license, the fingerprint, and the missing person report that we were pretty sure that this was who we had.
Can I back up for just a second? How do they plump the skin?
They do this at the medical examiner's office.
Okay.
I don't know exactly the exact way they do it. I don't know how they have to moisten it somehow, and I don't know if they just use air or what to plump it up, but they can get it to a point that they can roll the fingertip part enough that they can actually get a readable print off of it.
Okay.
So, and again, this is a whole different science of police work, is when you go into what some of these people do in the CSI world. It's different, and we're lucky because we have a great state medical examiner's office, and they know how to do so much of this stuff. And because Utah has so many small agencies, we have to rely on our state medical examiners and our state crime lab to be able to help us with a lot of these things. And again, our captain being, working with the state medical examiner's office, he kind of had a little bit of an in, and was able to, really get our case brought to the forefront of a lot of people down in Salt Lake.
Jeez.
Anyway, we started getting different assignments, and one of my assignments was to go with another detective, and we went down to Salt Lake to try and find this man's mother. And she was elderly. She lived in a trailer out on the west side of Salt Lake. Really a nice lady. We got there, and it's one of those things. Anytime you have to deliver a death message is not anything cool. It's one of the hardest things you ever do in law enforcement, is tell somebody that their loved one has somehow been killed, whether it's a fatal car accident, hunting accident, or anything. Anyway, trying to tell someone that their son or daughter has been involved in a cruel homicide is completely different, because it really makes that poor person wonder what has happened and why their son or daughter was in that position and who would want to kill them. Anyway, we met with this poor lady, and she broke down, and it was really hard. And after a few minutes, she gained her composure, and she says, "I knew something bad had happened to her son." She says, "He always kept in contact." She says, if a day or two went by, she says, "I knew something was wrong." She says, and when I had not heard from him for several days, she said that the mother had called this man's daughter and said, "Have you seen or heard from your dad?" And she's like, "No, I'm worried."
Oh,
So they actually made a police report that this man was missing, and this had been about between 9 and 10 months that the body had been, this man had been murdered, dismembered, and then just strewn off the side of the freeway.
Jeez.
Before we found his body. So it took a while. This family wondered for almost a year where their loved one was. In a way, it was kind of neat to be able to tell someone that they could put closure to their missing person.
Right.
But on the other hand, it was sad because of the way we had to put an end to it.
Well, and then when you have to deliver the news about being in several pieces, that's gotta be horrendous.
That was really hard. I met the man's daughter, and she was wonderful. She was in her mid-20s. She was smart. She was very intelligent. She gave us a lot of information, and she kind of went off on her dad a little bit. She says he's weird. He does his weird things. She says, but he's never treated me bad, and he's always been my dad. She says, even when he dresses up like a woman, and she chuckled about it.
Yeah.
She says it was just his weird thing, and some people have weird
we all
hobbies.
have weird things, right?
And I guess this was his weird hobby.
Yeah.
But she says he never did anything to make her not want to love her dad. And she said he was always good to his mother. And she says this is why this whole case was so hard for them, because they were left completely oblivious to why anything, why her dad was missing. So this was hard for her.
He wasn't involved in like drugs or things like that.
No, but it comes to find out that the friends that he lived with and hung around with, they were the ones that were involved in the drugs, and that's what took us to this next stage.
Okay.
And we now had an address where he'd been living. We had all kinds of more information. We had a storage unit that he'd rented. There were so many things that were now coming available to us because of being able to talk to the mother and to his daughter. And they were filling in a lot of blanks. And again, we have a giant puzzle, and we're getting little tiny pieces and trying to piece them in and make this case, move forward and see if we can find something where we can actually get charges on some people.
Right.
Anyway, as we started to move forward, there was a lot of search warrants we had to write, and getting warrants on 9 and 10-month-old information is a little sketchy. You try to go to a judge and you try to explain things, and the judges are fantastic. They're not going to affix their name to something unless they really can see that what you're doing is a lawful search.
Right.
And we were able to get some search warrants down in Salt Lake County. We're still 3rd District Court. We're still dealing with the same judicial system. Summit County and Salt Lake County are in the same 3rd District Court area. So we were dealing with judges who are pretty strict, but they were understanding, and we were able to execute some of these warrants, and we started finding more and more information. In fact, we found where I'm going to call him our friend, this poor guy that had been murdered. We found out where he had been murdered and actually dismembered.
Oh.
It was in a home on the kind of central east side of Salt Lake City. When we executed our warrant.
How did you know to go to that property?
A lot of investigation was going on, and we were finding out names and informations and where he had lived, who he had rented from, who the people that he was hanging out with. And it was just an amazing way of actually just doing your investigation, finding more and more and more. And come to find out that there was a girl involved. Now we're talking, this man was in his 50s. He was involved with he was friends with a gal that was in her probably late 30s. And he was trying to be more of a mentor to her because she was heavily involved in the methamphetamines. She was a meth user.
So sad.
And he was trying to get her out of it. And one of the things that happened was this poor girl not only being involved with methamphetamine, she couldn't pay for it. She didn't have a job. So the way she got her drugs was by obviously prostitution, selling herself.
Jeez.
And she was involved with a motorcycle gang down in Salt Lake City and Salt Lake County area.
When you say involved, like she was friends with them, she hung out with them.
No, they were using her.
Oh, she was their prostitute.
Being involved, they were abusing the daylights out of this gal.
That's so sad.
They were forcing her into pornography. They were forcing her into forced sex situations, and it was very ugly. Anyway, the man that had been murdered had stepped up and told this girl, "You don't have to do this. You don't have to do this. Change your life. Change your life." Even though he was odd in his own way, he still had that fatherly attitude about him, trying to help this gal get out of the situation she was in with the drug trade and being involved in pornography and the kind of garbage that she was involved with.
Oh, so sad.
Well, what happened was a couple of these guys that were doing the videos and stuff actually came over to where this girl was staying. Our victim was there with her, and these guys from this motorcycle group came over, and things just got completely out of hand. And
were they picking her up? They were trying
to get her to go do what she had been doing. Like I said, she was involved in all kinds of the sex trade business.
So it was like, hey, it's your pickup ride. We're here.
Pretty much. And our victim got involved and basically stuck his nose in where he shouldn't have stuck his nose at this point. And these biker gang guys basically took him out and made an example out of him in front of this woman and another guy who they had brought along with them.
Oh my gosh.
And they killed him.
How?
They shot him in the head.
Oh my gosh.
Now the reason we know this is because after finding out a lot of our witnesses, we had 2 eyewitnesses, but again they were heavily involved with methamphetamine, both of them. Yeah. And we were able to find out what had happened, and they said that they shot him, and then they got a sawzall and just decided to cut his body up right there in the basement of this home that we were actually doing a search warrant in.
Are they trying to traumatize these two? Like,
exactly.
Just putting the fear of God in them?
They were
Jeez.
terrorizing these two. Now, to understand the mind of somebody who's on methamphetamine, they're in a different world, and it's an unfortunate world. But somebody that is involved in meth, they see things and then it amplifies it because of the drugs. So to see a person that they know murdered, and then they put the gun to the other two people's heads and said, "This goes out, you're next." So they know that they could be very easily murdered.
The same situation happening to
Same
me.
thing.
Yeah.
And again, kind of you're in the dark corners of society, and who cares? Who cares about these people?
Oh.
And this is where we're coming in saying, we do care. All law enforcement cares about somebody. If you've been murdered, you belong to somebody in this world, and we want to find out who you belong to and try and make things right. Well, as the continuation goes on, the guy that they were traumatizing, they looked at him and said, "Go to this guy's truck. There's a duffel bag in the back of his truck. Go get it." So he leaves the basement of this home.
They trusted him to do that?
Well, they knew that if he didn't, they knew who he knew. They knew who he was.
Okay.
They would get him.
They'll chase him down.
And the girl was still there, so they knew that they would kill her. And anyway, he complied. He ran right out of the truck, got in the back, got the duffel bag, brought it right back in, and they commenced cutting this guy up in pieces. They severed so many body parts off his, the main torso, and just cut him up.
My gosh.
And the home that they were in was an old home, like I said, on the central east side of Salt Lake. The home was probably 140 years old.
Not
The
occupied.
cellar, no, it was occupied. It was
Okay.
it was a larger home. They used it and rented rooms out.
Okay.
There was a lot of people in the house when we executed the warrant. There were just normal people. There was a couple of college students renting rooms there, and other people that's all they were. It was just a room to rent.
Yeah.
And they had a shower and a place that they could get cleaned up, and it's just a small house where some people that don't have a lot of money just lived. Anyway, the basement / cellar to this house had did not have a cement floor in it. It was just a dirt floor, and so whatever mess that they made in there wasn't really much of a mess. It just kind of absorbed into the earth. One of the odd things was that we actually found the Sawzall blade in that room that had been used.
Oh, they just cut him up and just tossed it to the side?
I have no idea why they discarded the blade. I don't know if it broke off the tool. I can't remember, but we actually found it in some of the debris inside this old shed, or this old cellar.
Wow.
And it was taken to the crime lab. The crime lab was able to get DNA off of it, and they said, yeah, this is the blade that at least cut up some of him. They don't know if it cut the whole thing, his whole body up.
Right.
Anyway, so these two people are now traumatized. They're watching their friend be dismembered by these motorcycle gang members. They cut his body up, throw it in a bag, and this man was quite tall. He was over 6 feet tall, and they just cut him up in little pieces and continued to stuff the bag full of his body.
Oh.
And when they were all done, they just told the other guy, they said, okay, take it out and put it in the back of the truck. Again, these people are traumatized. They just watched their friend get murdered, so they're going to do whatever they're being told. They're users of methamphetamine. They, common term is, they're tweakers.
Yeah.
And these people are freaked out of their head. They're scared to death. Anyway, they go out and they force this younger man. He's not a gang member. He's friends with the guy that was murdered, and he's friends with this girl. And he just, again, wrong place, wrong time. So they force him to drive the truck up to Wyoming. By now, it's becoming evening time. It's starting to get dark. And apparently these bikers going around, they know all the back roads, all the bars, all the places to go. Anyway, they start heading towards Wyoming. And just before they get to where they would cross state line, they make the exit and go down on this frontage road. And the one guy gets out. This is a standard cab pickup truck, so there's 3 guys in this truck. One of them now gets in the back. He's in the bed of the truck where the duffel bag is.
2 of the biker guys. Okay.
So you got one biker guy in the front, the kid that's been traumatized, he's driving, and the other biker guy is now in the back seat, or in the back of the bed of the truck, and he's opening the bag out, and he's just tossing body parts out off the side of this road.
Just while they're just driving?
Just driving up this dirt road. And this is why we had almost a full mile or more of a crime scene, because as they're driving, he's just tossing body parts out. And depends on how hard he could throw. He would throw them out between, 5 or 10 feet off the road to 15, 20 feet off the side of this dirt road.
Oh my
And again, I'm talking between this frontage road and the railroad tracks. It's, I don't know, maybe a couple of 100 yards at some point, and some points it's shorter. There's a creek there. There's a lot of. It's out in the wilds. It's out in the middle of kind of nowhere. Anyway, they get almost all the body parts out, throw it out as they start to work their way into Wyoming, and they says, "Okay, let's go to the bar and have a few drinks."
Oh.
So
let's just go relax after this.
Normal afternoon. Kill a guy, dismember him, go get rid of the body, and then go have a few beers.
Sounds like an episode of
CSI.
Well, that, or what's that biker show everybody watches? Sons of Anarchy.
Yeah. Who knows? Maybe that's where they got some of the.
Yeah, probably.
I don't know.
Anyway.
The kid is scared to death, so he doesn't dare drink because they know he's gonna have to drive. And he does not want to get pulled over, doesn't want to get a DUI, doesn't want to get anything. So they go to the bar. He just drinks Coke.
So we're going to stop here. Our bad guys are going to take a break, so we're going to take a break. We will see you guys next week with my dad on part 2 of the dismembered body. Thanks, guys. Have an awesome day. Have an awesome day. Have an awesome